Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta Meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, this is take 3 of the introduction to season 9, episode 20 of the Scientology Outside of the Church podcast, brought to you by AOGP, the Advanced Org of the Great Plains. I'm here with Scientology Girl and Arthur Mudakis, and the title of this podcast, is going to be something along the lines of Mutual Out-Rudiments. Mutual Out-Rudiments, by L. Ron Hubbard's definition, is where you have a rudiment, an ARC break, a present time problem, a missed withhold, something that somebody nearly found out about that you did but didn't, an overt, a contra-survival act that is something you've done or somebody has done to you perceivably, and invalidation and evaluation. Those are the rudiments. So what brought this to light was the current, I just said this before the podcast 3 takes ago, was the current hullabaloo surrounding P. Diddy, or what was the other name that he went by?
Puff Daddy.
Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, and his incarceration after significant mutual out-rudiments with many people, celebrities, so on and so forth. So I thought it would be an interesting topic, given once again it comes up, seems like it comes up a lot lately, with especially with the cancel culture, which is an out-rudiment itself. But we're going to get into that. So do you guys have any questions on how this connects to that, or originations for that matter?
I don't.
Well, can you give us a brief rundown on what it is?
Well,
what's an out-rudiment? What's an mutual out-rudiment? What is it?
Let's say that you're forcing people to do things that they don't want to do and didn't know that they were going to be involved in because you're a celebrity of a sexual nature.
Okay.
And you're trying to get a leg up in the business, and in order to do that, you have to do things you don't want to do. And we'll keep it that simple. Keep the sex thing to a minimum.
So it's not always about, for example, I always saw mutual out-rudiments as, somebody's like, let's say, smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, hey, do you want one? Like peer pressure and stuff like that. And I guess that also looks like sort of like you don't want to do that, but then there are cases where you do want to do that. You do want to partake. So I always took it in the case of, you do want to, but it can also be you don't.
Right. And this crosses over into the code of honor, personal ethics.
Guilty by association.
And the big A, agreement.
Yeah.
Which then goes into affinity, reality, communication, and understanding, or ARC, and KRC, knowledge, responsibility, control, and power.
Right.
So could it also be like a form of extortion in a sense?
Yeah, extortion, coercion.
It could.
Yeah.
Because we were
So what other words can we relate to it, like that's non-Scientological?
Well, Scientology Girl said coercion, peer pressure, come on, everybody's doing it. We watched a TikTok last night where there was a woman who was part of the recording industry, and she was an artist, and she was describing how difficult it was to get a leg up in the industry, because in order to get a leg up in the industry, and this is pretty dark, you have to do things you don't want to do in order to advance your career. Now, this goes back to the Harvey Weinstein thing. It's been around as long as beings have been embodied.
River Phoenix comes to mind.
Yeah. There's how many people have we lost because of this sort of a thing? So I thought it would be interesting to describe this and go over it now that it's here we are again in a new unit of time type of a thing, and kind of unpack this whole thing. And a lot of it does have to do with rudiments in life.
Would you say, I have an example, like I know about these people who, and I actually know somebody like this, but who marries people just because of religious peer pressure, even though that person is abusive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, well, it's better to spend eternity with somebody who's going to beat the shit out of you than it is to sin against God and be out of wedlock and all that shit.
Mm-hmm. No, I personally was told that if I didn't marry the girl that was going to be the mother of my firstborn, that I would be declared a suppressive and kicked out of the church back
And
in
then you did.
1988.
Yeah, you
and I
did.
did,
Yeah.
and hilarity ensued.
Okay.
So that is that's the gray areas where one has a code of honor and one violates that code of honor and crosses the line into going into agreement with something. And like we said in other podcasts, when you cross your own personal line, boundaries, whatever you want to call it, then you have a problem and you're causing yourself a problem. But where you agree to do something that you shouldn't be doing, but it's the only way to quote unquote survive or survive better, there's where the problem begins. That is mutual out-rudiments. In LRH's sense, it was the auditor says, well, that's not really a withhold, so he doesn't write it down in the session worksheets, and the because it's the same girl or the same guy or whatever the deal is, and they don't want their withhold gotten off. So and this is probably the worst part of it is everybody, you see this all the time. Everybody hates a rat.
Yeah.
And that's really screwed up, is because, well, and I mean, this comes from prison culture as well, is because the society, it makes it okay that you give us information on this person and we'll give you a lesser sentence type of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty dark.
Yeah.
That sort of thing has to happen.
I've always found even the bail thing weird. Like what accountability is it that you can just pay your way to freedom? And it's normalized completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I missing something?
Well, if you look at the way bail is set up, if you jump bail, somebody is liable for, typically, unless you have the money to pay the bail yourself, somebody is liable for that bail money. But who benefits?
Yeah.
The government that allowed you to get out on bail. So they get the money, the bail bondsman pays the government, and then you have a bounty hunter coming after you because they had to forfeit whatever bond it was because you didn't do what you said you were going to do.
Right.
So to a certain degree, that's mutual out-rudiments as well, because I mean, you got this complicity that goes on where it's okay to do this. And this goes out really, really far.
I mean, if you really think about it, the whole planet.
And that's exactly where I was headed.
Because we all agreed to become aberrated to be here.
Man, she's quick.
Sorry.
Mutual out-rudiments. I mean, you come down to, well, it's a sort of thing with the 1952 movie. Oh gosh, the one with Gort, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Yeah, I can't think of the name. It's one of my favorites, and I can't think of the name. Forbidden Planet was around that time too, where they come to Earth and say, look, you guys are part of a larger galactic civilization, and with the onset of your ability to blow everything up, we have to step in and say, mind your P's and Q's and get your act together, or Gort here is going to turn your planet into a burned out cinder. So
yeah,
I can't think of the name of it for the life of me right now. It's just,
I can't think of it either.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing, is mutual out-rudiments is you are in agreement with something that is not okay, that is not pro-survival, but you're doing it anyway. And how many problems this sort of thing comes down to is that you're in agreement with going down the tone scale.
Yeah.
And out ARC with somebody, you're the higher tone selectively gives. Like in this situation, and I'm not saying this is the case, but I mean it could be. now they're trying to implicate Kevin Hart in this whole thing with him. And because he was there, it was in a video, and one of the girls in the bathtub, hair catches fire from a candle, and he shuts off the video. But
before that, he was sort of chuckling about it.
Right.
And that's hard for me because I really liked him. I thought he was fucking hilarious and great.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's why they're actors.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we get a perception of their role as we're watching them, and then and it's funny actually that you brought this up today, because I was just scrolling through, it was Facebook or something, and I don't know about you guys, but you just scroll through Facebook, and then there'll be an actor saying, you know, some kind of profound something, you know, go for what you believe in, and don't do this, and don't do that. It's an actor with these quotes attached to them.
Whether
you know what I mean? It's like a
necessarily the case.
Yeah, like there's heaps with Keanu Reeves, you know, especially Keanu Reeves, how he was poor and did this and then, you know, went for his dreams, and look at him now kind of thing. And you know, it's real, it's like a mockery on as well. You know, an actor with this saying that is somewhere, that has money coming out of their asshole, you know, that doesn't have these stresses that the average person does, telling you to strive for your dreams, it'll be okay. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and you know, to us, and this is definitely, it's going to go, I can see it's going to go in directions I hadn't even planned on it to go into.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is that virtue signaling by somebody?
Well, here's the thing.
Who knows?
Here's okay.
Not Keanu necessarily.
Yeah, I'm kind of like in favor of Keanu, just because I have seen him do things that's pretty amazing. Like, for example, just riding a subway bus and giving somebody his seat, or you know, it's repeatedly. There's a pattern of him being a very fucking nice guy.
Right.
So, you know, and
then what happens if you saw him in one of these videos?
Well,
again, he's an actor.
I don't think I will.
You know what I mean?
don't think I will, because Kevin Hart is funny, but I don't necessarily think he's a great guy, because you know, even the type of stand-up that he does and stuff is somewhat questionable. How he talks about his wife, sometimes about his kids and stuff like that, you know. But with Keanu, I don't know.
Well, and you bring up an important point there, that both of you, that, well, you know, the lowest common denominator is what popular culture is typically. It's because it's popular. What's the definition of the word popular, Arthur?
I'm not sure. Let me see. I'll let you know in just 1 second.
While he's having a look, I just want to take a little bit of a side rail. The whole popular thing makes me think of something recently that I discovered. So there was this woman, I really can't remember who she was, but she was on TikTok, and she was basically saying that there was this video going around of this couple, and they had two different viewpoints. And it's the funniest thing, because on her timeline, that the woman who's doing the video about these two, right? In her threads, the comments, she basically only saw from a woman's perspective. So they were saying, yeah, your guy's such an asshole, he shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then the husband of this woman who watched this video and saw the comments went and looked on his side, and all the guys were at the top. So the algorithm basically gives you what it thinks you're gonna agree with. And they were like in favor of the guy, and they're like, yeah, she's such a bitch, you should divorce her, all of this stuff. So it's pretty freaking amazing. And that's the thing, you don't know what's real and what isn't.
Right.
I mean, going on Reddit, for example, and obviously people listening can see that I very much am an avid social media viewer, but going on Reddit, it's crazy because I tell you, I don't know if it's more real or more fake, because obviously you get so many keyboard warriors, but at the same time, there's people that go on there, and sometimes, I mean, I've made a post and it has just been freaking brutal, where I've been like, "Am I the asshole here?" And they're like, "Absolutely," you know. So it's it's really funny to see myself along with several other people who's just like annihilated by a bunch of obviously keyboard warriors.
Well, and that's the thing is LRH says in a policy letter, and I'm sorry I don't have it to hand. He says that phones are psychotic because you don't know who's on the other end of the phone.
And this is the thing, though, because
Same
if
deal.
you have to not just that, but even if you are in person with somebody, right? I've had fights with people that I would never have had in person, but I would have had it over a long distance comm line.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it
Because
just makes you braver.
Right, because there's no consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold that thought.
Sometimes I even think around like your algorithm being catered to you. Sometimes I question the advancement of AI, not in the sense that it'll choose videos for me as such, but that it will actually create videos as I'm scrolling.
Right.
It's coming
for me to view. I actually think it's here.
Yeah.
I actually think I think it's way
they,
more advanced than
they're
we
letting
know.
on. Yeah. I would agree with you. And you know, the if LRH were commenting on this sort of thing today, which he very well may be, but it seems to me that the reliable source aspect from the data series is your reliable source is not nearly as reliable as you think, because you're being fed what the algorithm says it thinks you want to be fed, or what they want you to be fed in order to get you to think, which is mutual out-rudiments, because you're being sold a bill of goods that isn't necessarily true at all.
Yep.
And that's something that people need to be aware of, because just because it's on the internet certainly does not make it true.
No.
True. That's right.
But you can
same with books.
Yeah, same. You know, with any form of communication, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, just because you read something doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But that's where mutual out-rudiments come in. Is if an algorithm is savvy enough to plot you out on the tone scale of what you're watching, what you're listening to, chances are you're going to go into agreement with it. That's how good they are. I mean, I absolutely loathe having to use titles to get SEO to pay attention to what it is that we do on YouTube.
Right.
I hate it. I don't do it with sometimes I change the name of the podcast and it's a different name on YouTube just because of that. So mutual out-rudes, Jonathan?
I want to take a look at the whole ARC break thing. Now, I know all ARC breaks stand from missed withhold, which at the bottom is an overt, which before that is a misunderstood concept, word, or symbol. But
very good.
What can we say about ARC breaks regarding mutual out-rudiments? Like, where could that be?
I was thinking about this like 5 minutes before we came on with Arthur, and there's no way that anybody can convince me of anything other than this, that what he says about all ARC breaks coming from a miss withhold, it is absolutely 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts, true. Because if you're ARC breaky about something, you're having upsets, you're getting upsets about something, this cancel culture and all this stuff. You know, I'm upset about what somebody said. Now, sure, like in the Louis C.K. situation, he's sitting there masturbating in front of people and he's okay with it, and people are offended with it. Probably shouldn't be doing that, Louis. But the thing is where it comes in at is if somebody is upset about something, even if it's that they have an ARC break, instead of just looking at it going, this guy needs some help, and walking out of the room, instead making a big, huge stink about it. I mean, it's socially, that's not something somebody should do, obviously.
Yeah.
But when you get an ARC break with somebody, people unequivocally do not get upset and have an ARC break. Affinity, reality, communication, or understanding is going asunder unless there is some missed withhold that happened prior to that.
So what would you say in the case of, let's
On
say,
their part.
okay, that guy's doing that in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this woman is with her kid, and she's like, ARC broken about it because her kid is there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it would sort of be, because the Thetan always knows, even if cognitively she's saying that guy's the asshole, he's on the bus where kids are, he shouldn't be doing that. Is the Thetan in charge processing and basically saying, I communicated, I was here, I was communicating, I decided to bring my child on this bus?
Well, I think
obviously we don't think that, but
well, how many people are that responsible?
Yeah, but would that be the ARC break there?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, as far as at the positive end of the tone scale, you could go even further, and they wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Right.
But I mean, in an ideal situation. But yes, I think that would be the case.
Agree to be aberrated.
Right. Whereas
you agree to have these kinds of fucked up things happen.
Right. I think at the higher end of the scale, it would be a situation of, okay, well, I'm going to report this to the authorities, and you move on with your life, and you explain it to your kid. I mean, and this is where the whole society goes. But anyway, Arthur did look this up, so we need to get back to that real quick. Popular. What's the definition?
So it is interesting because the first definition, liked or admired by many people or by a particular person or group. And the second is intended for or suited to the taste, understanding, or means of the general public rather than specialists or intellectuals. And then number 3, carried on by the people as a whole rather than restricted to politicians or political parties.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to from Latin popularis, from people. But what's interesting about this is it doesn't say anything about honesty or truth. It's just something that's popular, right? And so with this particular topic you're looking at, there's no fact to any of it, is there?
No, it's just it's group agreement. It's group agreement.
Yeah, which makes it true to some degree. Because if so many people believe in it, then it becomes true. Kind of like tax in a way. Everybody believes it's a true thing, and so it's quite popular amongst the world.
Mm-hmm. Right,
like it or not, it's very popular.
Yeah, the what is it? The two things you can't escape: God and taxes. That old saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's where agreement comes in, is that you make it so. Otherwise, because there's that 3 realities thing: yours, mine, and the agreed upon reality. And that's mutual out-rudiments or not. Mm. It's okay to do these things. It's okay to traffic other human beings' bodies and force them to do things and record it and all this stuff. I mean, this is the planet we live on. This is the society that we live in.
So most of this, from one aspect, is money related somehow.
Seems
so there's
way.
like a financial reward, for, like you were just saying, human trafficking, doing sexual acts to get a certain role, demeaning yourself and going against your own morals and ethics in order for some kind of financial gain or a perception of financial security or lifestyle security to some degree. Mm-hmm. So what about, like, let's say outside of those, where does this apply? Like, let's say it's not financially related and it's not survival related, then how else could this play out?
Let's say in a marriage, for example. you know, if we're still talking about the ARC break thing, right? And I say to you, gosh, John, you know, you need some meat on those bones. Like you're getting really, really skinny. If obviously John won't feel that way because, you know, he's this big, strong guy. So it's like he won't have that ARC break because I'm not missing his withhold of feeling, hey, I'm looking a little too buff or whatever, you know. So that can sort of be one way. But in regards to mutual out-rudiments of ARC break, so for example, a lot of marriages do this, and I personally don't agree with it. Like John knows, I have his back up to a certain point. Like I will always choose integrity and ethics over loyalty. And maybe that's a flaw, I don't know, but that's the way I like to live my life.
Code of honor.
Right. And so, you know, if some couples, what they do is if you've got a problem with somebody, I got a problem with somebody.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that's a reactive way to look at things.
Yeah, mutual out-rudiments.
Yeah.
And
even when they're wrong, they'll back them up. Like it blows my mind.
Right. Well,
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
What? And you know that is mutual out-rudiments by definition is okay. I mean, you know, that's that bros before hoes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really aberrated. Is that a thetan has to be agree to become aberrated. A thetan has to choose to be and act in an aberrated fashion. You have to. You know what's scary? To stimulate yourself. Go ahead.
The thing I find really scary about it is it works, and it works a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's really scary. You know, kind of like what we were talking the other week around responsibility, the Milgram experiment, and all these experiments that have been done around, you know, coercive acts and behaviors, and it's insane. Absolutely. You know, TV commercials are that way designed as well.
Yeah, one of the and this is just a little point, and maybe it's a waste of time to mention it, but there's this guy on TikTok, and he's been around for quite some time. We see his videos all the time. Of course, we're subscribed to his channel or feed, and it's what is it? The popular websites you probably don't know about or you should know about.
Yeah.
And he knows how the algorithm works, and he knows how to push people's buttons, and he'll say part 147, and he puts his hands up and he says 1, and then he puts 5, and then he puts 3, and he does this to get people to correct him in the comments so that he gets more comments, so he gets boosted in the algorithm.
Because he knows people like to be right.
He knows people like to be right.
People like to point out other people and make them wrong.
Right. Now, that's not my point, but I find it interesting that he understands this, and he's my favorite. And here's why. And when I say my favorite is there never used to be anybody else than him doing this. Now on TikTok, there's 4, 5, 6, 7 people in the last couple of weeks doing the same exact thing, copying what he does. Why? Why? Because if you haven't, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you know more about this than I do. On TikTok, the more viewers you have, the more viral it goes.
Yeah.
Continue. You get whatever else. You get paid for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to that degree, from my viewpoint, and the whole point of this is I could never, ever do that to somebody, because my viewpoint would be, fuck, I got to come up with something original. I can't do something somebody else does and just repeat it, and maybe I have a better way of marketing or something like that. I mean, to me, that's just not something that is right to do. But this is the thing that you see in society is
him doing that so much, because it's little basic things. But when
I'm not talking about him, I'm talking about all the other people that are copycatting his methodology and doing the same damn thing with different websites. Yeah,
it would be okay if they even just as so much as worded it differently. They're stealing his shit word for word.
It's almost, you know, IP is intellectual property. This guy came up with the idea.
Powerful website.
You should know about. And I just sit there and I see these other people doing this, and it's smarmy, like, ew.
Yeah.
Just flick past that, honey.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
watch something else. But people don't have any problem with doing that. It's like, yeah, I'll sell my soul to the devil. I mean, you see this with people in the Illuminati and all this stuff, this big hullabaloo about the Olympics and that whole opening ceremony and I mean,
it got popular.
It got popular.
But I've honestly been observing it for a while now, like a lot of years, and it's definitely weird, like super weird. And then there's this whole thing where they say, what do they call it? Not embarrassment, humiliation rituals and stuff like that. Like where, look at Sam Smith, excellent artist. He was fucking incredible. And then all of a sudden,
made a deal with the devil, quote unquote.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he started dressing weird and all this stuff, and they said that was probably a humiliation ritual. Dua Lipa was another one. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her correctly, but they're all, a lot of these people go through this, and you know what? They're all fucking connected in some way, shape, or form to people like Jay-Z, P. Diddy, all of them.
And this is where, and we're kind of going the long way around and giving examples of where people mutual out-rudiments. Well, they made a TikTok video copying this guy that came up with it first. I can do the same thing, and if I can make $1,200 a month doing that or whatever. I mean, some people make ridiculous amounts of money from TikTok and being an quote unquote popular influencer.
Yeah. This also makes me think of, since we're on the topic of stars, you can have mutual out-rudiments with your favorite, icon, basically. I do not want to know. They never reported it, but guaranteed when Chester Bennington, when he offed himself, I guarantee you there was a lot of people who did that as well, because they just couldn't. It was just,
And you bring up a really, really good point.
Eminem's song, Stan, is another example.
And that because like electrons attract like electrons.
Yeah.
Higher tone selectively gives. Oh, I'm depressed. Chester's depressed. ARC. Boom.
Yeah.
Mutual out-rudiments. That's how the whole thing gets started.
Yeah.
And I get it, but see, that's where popular culture comes from, is this agreement. I agree with, let's face it. I was just reading an article yesterday on Apple News about Linkin Park's new lead singer. Well, see, there we go. But see this, that's my point.
She sucks though.
That's
my place Chester with this bitch.
Obviously.
What did she do to get there?
Sing better for one.
Well, look at AC/DC. AC/DC had a lead singer who died from a drug overdose, and then they got Brian to step in, and they were successful in the beginning, but they were obviously a lot more successful once they got another singer who was similar to them.
Yeah.
But and that's not my point, but I mean it can be done. I mean, Chester Bennington sang for Stone Temple Pilots for a short period of time, but he was too busy with Linkin Park to continue on, and unfortunately he passed away and that sort of a thing. But the thing is people, they identify with a particular tone level, with a particular viewpoint, and the article was talking about it's hard to replace somebody like that because a lot of his lyrics were pretty dark. I mean, let's face it, they weren't what you call sunshiny and unicorns and rainbows. They were pretty dark, crawling in my skin, but see, that's the thing. That's what's popular. It's mutual out-rudiments through tone level, and people don't know that they're doing it because they identify with that tone level. They can't help it. Why are we interested and why are we talking about Scientology and following this L. Ron Hubbard dude? There's an example.
Yep.
Is that mutual Out-Rudiments?
Well, here's the thing, though.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here for a second.
Here's the thing. I think yes and no, because I think everybody, when they start out, they want to help themselves. They want to better themselves, and they see Scientology as an opportunity to do that. For the most part, I think it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. However, you do get people. This is the first point. You do get people who join Scientology knowing, quote unquote, that it's a bad thing or thinking that it's a bad thing. And then deciding to do it anyway because, oh, you know what? If I do this stuff, I'll get some money and I'll be rich. And look at Tom Cruise and John Travolta, and that's how they did it. So I can do it too. I don't care what I've got to do.
Standard.
It's the same thing with people joining, the Church of Satan, for example,
or Mormonism. Most Mormons are pretty goddamn wealthy.
Well, Mormons, I think, probably believe that what they're doing is the right way. I mean,
well, and that's my point.
But if you're joining the Church of Satan, for example, you know for a fact that shit is dark.
You know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
Arthur, you look like you got something on deck.
Well, yeah. So, but it's all perspective based, and everybody's personal reward is so different, right? So on one hand, yes, joining the Church of Satan, there's an element of darkness, but to somebody that their perspective and just their own makeup, it's not darkness to them, it's the right thing, right? So, and this is where it kind of gets tricky because now we're moving into personal perspectives on our own ideals as well, but they're so different worldwide. And this is what makes it interesting because somebody might be just totally fine giving their body away to work up the ranks without an issue as well. No different to, like things like OnlyFans and things like that. Like there's a lot of people out there that have no issue whatsoever exposing themselves for financial gain. And the question really comes to, and then the question really comes down to, okay, I might find that offensive. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Somebody might sell their body to a producer or a director to make $20 million in a film,
and they're okay with it.
Wrong? Yeah, and this is where it becomes a really interesting area because my personal perspective towards that is wrong. However, I'm aware that it happens, and doesn't make it wrong. Question mark.
Realities are relative.
Well, it's difficult because, on the one hand, there's the whole a clear cannibal is a clear cannibal.
Yep, which I meant to mention yesterday in our conversation in episode 19, and I didn't get to.
Which is a good example.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But on the other hand, beings are basically good, unaberrated. And if you're hurting other people.
But again, define good. If sex to someone is good, and this is where it becomes funny because what is actually good and what is not actually good? Because what if we've been taught everything we believe is good is actually a lie? And these people are actually on the truth side of the fence. This is how things are really done in this world. And we've been deluded to think that it's the opposite, and therefore we remain peasants while they succeed. Well, what if it's the other way around?
That's where Lisa says, no good deed goes unpunished.
Right. Well, for me, it's I guess it's subjective, objective again, because obviously, if there's no guilt, then again, clear cannibal scenario. If you're doing an OnlyFans and you love what you do and you feel like you're in some way, shape, or form helping society, maybe through, I don't know, less STDs or because there's no physical contact or whatever, or maybe the population growth is too much, then fine. But you could also take an ulterior viewpoint and be like, well, you know what, this world is in a serious problem of over the top dopamine levels, and it's all they can think about, and sometimes you're contributing to a very big problem of porn addiction. So you know, there's a lot of angles, and I guess we can't really say what is right and wrong. And Scientology is very much a case of the individual, and ethics are a personal thing. So I get that,
Yep.
and I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah, because otherwise, then you're going.
Because
down
I
the
could do
same path.
Scientology, I could get audited, and at the end of my auditing, think to myself, actually, I'm going to do OnlyFans and be completely okay with it. Or
Kinda
I
link.
could become clear. I could become clear, and then be like, you know what, Scientology is not for me anymore. I'm going to go join the Church of Satan, or you know, I'm going to go be promiscuous with a few directors. You know what I mean? Like, how do you know what the end result will be for an individual and what's right or wrong for an individual? And it goes back to what society deems as acceptable or unacceptable, and that's a powerful force.
Well, this
It's a
reminds me.
really powerful force.
This reminds me kind of
Yeah, it
Aleister
is.
Crowley's "Do What Thou Will," because
Mhm.
he's technically
As long as you
not
harm no
saying,
one.
yeah, he's not saying go ahead and harm anybody. He's instead saying practice your will. So if he's basically saying in a nutshell self-determinism, and don't go ahead and hurt people, but also don't go make agreements, because if you're just making an agreement, being coerced or whatever, or being in fear and making that agreement, you're not practicing your will, because it's your will, but at the same time it isn't. There's this gray area that you're sort of in between, where you feel like it's
Well,
survival to do this, but you know you shouldn't do this.
even if we consider Aleister Crowley, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about him is he asked for people to participate and they agreed. So he didn't kidnap
Mutual
people
Out-Rudiments.
to do what he was doing. He
Right.
gave them the offer, and then they said yay or nay.
I'll
They
buy.
said yes or no. And a lot of famous people actually went through his space as well. You know,
To
Led
this-
Zeppelin recorded a lot of their albums
Yep.
in his house after he died.
Look at the
you know, so he was a
symbology.
big
Yeah.
player in this.
Yeah.
Let's
That's
be
right.
honest, Scientology
But again,
sort of did the
it
same.
was
Yeah. Yep. It's
In
not
a sense,
that's
yeah.
It's
that
not true
different.
for
Yeah.
you. Yeah, if it's not true for you, it's not true.
Right.
So if it is, agreement,
Right.
ultimately.
Right. So, you know, mutual Out-Rudiments is something that a person agrees to. Now, as an example, and Arthur, one of you guys might have the answer to this. The powers that be, they have to abide by the rule that we have to tell them what we're doing and be completely overt about that for them to do what they want to do. It's always out there, like it is on the $20 bill and the Twin Towers and the Pentagon up into flames and everything. They put that out there on the bill. You just have to fold it to get the image.
I've seen something like that.
Anybody can Google it, and you can fold the bill properly. And people say, "Well, it's you know, if you fold anything, you can get anything." No. You look at this and you go, "Okay, this is what they were doing." So that way, it's free will. You are entering into that good night because you are choosing to enter into that quote unquote good night as an agreement. It's just that they're not saying we told you so. It's just that you know that we will tell you, but we won't overtly tell you. We'll just put it out there, and if you do it, well, no, I didn't coerce you. That's pretty dark. So, you know, mutual Out-Rudiments, again, tone level.
Right. Do you think mutual Out-Rudiments has a place in this world? Because, okay, for example, you see governments, right? They join up with all these countries and stuff like NATO, for example. And that would have the apparency of being the greatest good. Because if everybody's in agreement, right, that if anybody fucks with us, there's going to be war, it would have the apparency of being a good thing. But obviously, war in general is psychotic. So, you know, as you always say, you say there, but I'm saying wherein lies the rub.
Well, it is they know things like the Antarctica thing. They have this agreement between most of, if not all of the major nations, that it is a no-go zone. You don't go to Antarctica, and Norway polices it for the group. What are they hiding? That's mutual out-rudiments. But the thing is
because it's a withhold.
Yeah, because we didn't agree to it. You have representatives that are supposed to be there, obeying your viewpoints. But when you write them letters, they go, "Oh, you poor little thing, you just don't understand. And this is the best for everybody. Just go away. Here's your letter. Bye-bye now." Slam.
Yeah.
When you write your representatives in a lot of cases in the United States, they don't give a shit about what you think. They're just, they care about what it is that's going to get them reelected, because it's an opportunity to become very, very wealthy through all of those political channels of people that they know and graft and all of that stuff. Again, mutual out-rudiments.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my take on it. And I don't have a dark view on this. I don't want to make it dark.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to look at this and go, wow, this is really a huge influence on this planet. And that's what Hubbard talks about in Keeping Scientology Working. Number 1 is group bank agreement, mutual out-rudiments. We're going to agree that these are the things, like you said, with war. I mean, diplomacy obviously is the high road. Look, these people in Palestine, they have a right to survive. Palestine used to be way bigger than it is now, just 50 years ago. And now it's a husk of what it used to be, and it's shrunk and it's shrunk and it's shrunk. And I'm not taking a political side here. I am just saying history repeats itself. What the Nazis did to the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians.
Yeah.
They're practicing genocide.
And we have so many things that mutual out-rudiments can be seen in, like countries, and I mean, basically what we're talking about. But it's just crazy to actually realize that one way or another we're going into agreement with things. And if you look at, like, another thing, the mental health industry. Oh my God. When I tell people that they need some sunlight, they need vitamins, they need to drink more water, they need to exercise, they need to try everything else first before they decide to go on medication for their depressive episodes, I get hounded at. And it is just crazy. And also kids on Ritalin and stuff. You're giving your child poison, and that is better.
But that's good parenting.
You think that's better for them than actually putting them in a situation where they can grow and be, children who can just. I mean, look at me, for example, right? Like, I basically came from nothing, and I have ADHD, and I manage without any medication. So, and I know in the previous podcast, it sort of sounded like I wasn't doing okay. I really am. But it is a struggle. It is more challenging than anybody else, or that most other, dare I say, neurotypical people. So when it comes to people with the psychiatric industry supporting them and stuff, I think it's absolutely insane. Absolutely. But that's the thing, victimhood.
Well, it's easy.
Victimhood is such an easy scapegoat to get out of situations.
Well, that's popular. That's popular.
Yeah.
That's therein lies the rub.
Yeah.
Again.
And guarantee a lot of these people that are saying about this P. Diddy thing, right? A lot of people that were in on those things, they're gonna they're gonna claim that they were victims.
You were there. You were communicating. Why did you let them do that to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Arthur?
And that's how they imprison themselves.
Yep, I agree. Arthur?
I was actually distracted for a little bit there, so I missed everything on the last few minutes. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I had a surprise guest rock up.
Oh, okay.
And
No
so I just
problem.
muted it. So continue.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is you're only responsible for that which you're being there and communicating with. That's the only way to be wrong. But there's also the datum of over or underestimation of effort for that individual.
Right.
And do you want to be involved in something like this? You get there and you find out, oh, wait, they're trying to spike my drink. Oh, wait, they're trying to rape me.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, they're trying to snuff my life out because, well, I'm a nobody and they're somebody and they're going to believe this person over another. I mean, you know, this goes in really dark directions really quick.
Yeah.
But the thing that really drives me nuts is you have this popular culture where they're looking at and they're idolizing, and LRH says, you know, God help anybody who's famous because they're not prepared for what can happen. And that's true. But man, what a bunch of monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, yikes.
Just for fame and money.
Just for attention and the almighty dollar. I mean, they will practically do anything. But again, mutual out-rudiments, once they've got the goods on you, you look at this Pizzagate thing and everything, and they get people to get involved in this stuff, and they go, we've got videos.
Yeah.
And now you're toast. You have to. That's where this thing leads, and that is an underestimation of the evil that men will do.
Right.
I think. And that's people have a hard time confronting evil, and so they get forced into situations.
But then again, when you look at it, when they do confront evil, what happens to them? We've recently been talking about, you know, Martin Luther King and Gandhi, all of those people, even Tupac. We just saw, and I don't know if this is fact, but that apparently Tupac was
he was the butt of a hit.
Yeah.
From
P. Diddy.
From P. Diddy. Supposedly this is what is being said.
Right. And, you know, Tupac, I believe, was very true to himself, and he rapped about controversial things.
He was outspoken.
Yeah.
Well, and then there was the East Coast rappers versus the West Coast rappers, you know, that whole, you know, identification thing.
It can either make or break you.
Right. And if I mean, Christ, and I'm not that I follow rap or anything like that, but what's his name? The one that got him imprisoned, that was part of that whole scene, held upside down over the side of a building off of a patio railing, Vanilla Ice, to try and get him to sign over his rights to his songs.
Jeez.
I mean, you're looking at criminal personalities who have become the pinnacle of this society and what it has to offer when it comes to entertainment. That's
and there's a popular message that goes along with it, isn't it? And,
well, exactly.
And it's hard because a lot of people that aren't in that position, like like, I don't know, civilians, for example, you know, idolize those things and then try and recreate them, like you're talking about the guy on the TikTok. And people are just reproducing these ideas that are really unhealthy.
Yeah, because this is what everybody expects. Yeah, that's mutual out-rudiments on a third and fourth dynamic level. And the kids that watch this stuff, you know, they just think, well, that's what I'm going to strive for. You know, a lot of these guys in jail, their goal is to either become an NBA player or a rap star because that's how you make money. This is their viewpoint. There isn't any, you know, I'm not going to become a PhD in something. I'll just go out and become a rapper.
Well, there's a recipe to that as well. You know, the fame, the fortune, the women, the drugs, the partying, the lifestyle, the cars, the gold.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets. That's what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty crazy.
I find it so interesting that the more solid you are, is the more you associate with solidity. Like, for example, your body, right? People who are fixated on their body and stuff like that, like getting plastic surgery after surgery and all of this stuff, they're also, they're also solid in their viewpoint of the things that they have. Like, havingness is everything to them. So like the gold chains and cars, they're all physical universe stuff. But the people with more substance, more flowy, you know, they can be anywhere and do anything
Mm-hmm.
and still be happy.
Mm-hmm. And that was always my point when I lived in Clearwater, and my kids went to a private school that was based on applied scholastics, an arm of the corporate church of Scientology that deals with delivering study through LRH Study Tech. And man, let me tell you, it was just ridiculous. The number of people coming through with these big, huge rings on their finger and necklaces and BMWs. And I mean, rarely did you see things beyond BMW. I don't remember seeing a Ferrari picking up their kid or something like that, but it was this status.
Mm.
I have the most toys. And when I was a kid in Los Angeles, back before this whole thing happened with the corporate church, you didn't see that at all. People had shitty cars. You know, they were doing Scientology to improve their lives. And, you know, the argument could be made, well, maybe those people came up the tone scale and, you know, they managed to get an employer or a business that's doing well or whatever. Okay, that's a possibility. I can admit that. But the thing is it's just he who has the most toys wins. They've fallen into the same rut. Hubbard wasn't like that. He wasn't. I mean, he didn't buy the most expensive car he bought was a Ford Lincoln. That was his thing. Lincolns aren't cheap, but they're not a BMW or a Bentley. And so, you know, you can't take it with you. What's the point? And well, the point of having this. Yeah, but being this is more important than having this. And they've lost their way. They've lost their way. And they've fallen into the abyss as far as I'm concerned, the corporate church. And there's lots of podcasts on that. And I'm not into bashing the church. It's just mutual out-rudiments. Instead of helping people, helping themselves and becoming selfish. And the stories I could tell you about parents and their children. I mean, I had the inside dope on this, and it was frightening. And I looked at it and went, these are OTs, these are Scientologists. And the things that they demanded for their kids and stuff like that. It was just privilege after privilege that they wanted. And I pay this because they've become bad actors because they were taught this by the church.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, like to some degree, like, you know, I had expectations of that to some degree going into Scientology as well.
Sure.
You know, if I better myself, it'll better my finances, you know, then I can do blah, blah. So there is a reward there as well for the effort, you know, and again, you have to sacrifice yourself, you know, and to do service, do the courses, all those kinds of things, you know, to get those rewards.
Right. Well, where's sacrifice on the tone scale? And I'm not saying that against you. I'm just saying, you know, you have to pay your dues. Anything worth doing, or having is worth working really, really hard for. Production.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you do that, and that's what Hubbard was all about, was produce, get something done.
I would like to disagree just a little bit.
I just saw it on your face.
No, not with you, with Arthur, just a little.
Okay.
It's for me, not a case of
you're on your own, kid.
For me, it's not a case of sacrificing yourself. I think you're sacrificing valences, you're sacrificing service facsimiles and victimness and all of those things in order to gain yourself back. So, you know, you're taking
100%.
You're taking responsibilities 100%. That you become just more of you.
And that's
Lisa, I agree.
Okay.
That's really hard for some people to do, which comes back to self-discipline, which comes back to ARC and KRC for one's own beingness and one's own self. Yeah.
The most difficult thing about that kind of thing is that in order to want change, you've got to have a bit of self-worth. And if you don't have self-worth, then you're just kind of gonna take whatever. But also, it's just you need self-worth in order to do things that give you more self-worth. So if you don't have any self-worth, you're not going to see things through. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people sometimes when they start Scientology, like, you have a friend or you have a partner or whatever, or a family member, and they encourage you to do Scientology. So then you do it, not necessarily because you fully want to and accept this is true for you, but just because, well, maybe just mutual out-rudiments in a way. Of course, it's not out-rudiments to do Scientology, but, it can be perceived in the beginning as that.
Well, it's the whole adage of the path of least resistance is what people will take.
Yeah.
Because the path of least resistance is the least amount of confront necessary in order to get what it is that you want, or at least you think you want.
Right.
And therein is, I really think the idea, and I'm sure that there are those people who would disagree, mainly because, well, in my opinion, they're much lower on the tone scale. The allegory of making a deal with the devil. In order to get what you want, you'll sell your soul to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Be a popular recording artist. And those people were low tone to begin with. If they're willing to do these things and front up and dress in red and follow these themes and everything, and then we'll give you what you want. We'll give you fame and success, but you have to do our bidding. Okay, where do I sign?
Yeah.
And we've seen time and time and time again people that have said, this shit is real. This is what these industries do.
Yeah.
Whether it's political, whether it's popular culture in movies, writing, whatever, that is mutual out-rudiments, because you're not, you work 30 years to get where you are, and somebody offers a deal and they say, well, you got to do this. Well, I'm tired of digging in the trenches. I'll just go ahead and do it. But what price personal integrity?
Religion.
And it's the same with normal jobs as well. It's the same kind of thing. It's not an uncommon thing to happen in even smaller organizations or, family businesses as well to some degree. These things still occur on a lesser level than Hollywood, or it happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All over the place.
I saw that when I told people 20 years ago, all of my friends, hey, look, here's what's going on. Time, place, form, and event. Time, place, form, and event. This is what happened. This is what's going on in the church. Da, da, da. And they're like, I see it. I don't agree with you, but I've just got too much to lose. Bye.
Religion sucks because, and I'm not saying Scientology, but in that way, it is kind of culty, and there's always somebody above you within the church and blah, blah. But I don't know. You've heard me speak about it. I'm not sure I actually mentioned it in the podcast about something called the drama triangle, where it's basically like you get your persecutors, your victims, and you get your rescuers on this triangle. And at any point in time, especially on the lower end of the tone scale, people are playing these roles. And so unfortunately, what's happened is society is largely in that victim state.
Below 2.0 on the tone scale.
Then you have the persecutors, which are, people who exercise control over other people's will, enforce, etc. And the sad thing is that everybody's looking for a rescuer. And I think that's where the God thing comes in. Oh, if I just pray about it, it'll all work out itself.
Maybe it'll work out. Yeah, if I believe hard enough, well enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I love about Scientology is that he's not, LRH isn't taking away from the fact that there very possibly could be a God, but he's saying the responsibility is within you to rescue yourself. You can fix your problems. You can make a better world. You can do, infinite amount of things that you want to do. and it's sad to see the relationships that people have, and they interact in this way, this persecutor, victim, rescuer type of way. Like I knew somebody recently whose friend was in an abusive situation, and they were like, they've got to do something. They've got to help this person. They must. And I was just like, no, the best you can do is flow power to her that she can get out of this situation. And I'm not saying don't help. I'm saying you have a role, right? And your role isn't to rescue somebody else. She's got to ultimately make that decision for herself. Or else, chances are, sometimes they end up resenting you. And then what good has it done? They just go back to the person.
Yeah, at a minimum, or they end up dead.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. And you see all these times, and you just want to shake people and be like, what could you be responsible for? All of these times that people are being a victim when they have no reason to be. And I'm not taking that from the stance of persecuting them. I'm taking it more from the stance of like, dude, you have the power within you to solve any problem. Like, and you saying that you were a victim and somebody else is responsible for the choices that you made is taking away your power. And we've spoken about this in another podcast, but ultimately I think that's really what exacerbates the problem.
It is.
And it's so easy to say, to go mutual out-rudiments and be like, well, I didn't have a choice.
Right, because they were holding a gun to my head and said, if I didn't, well, then you.
Yeah. And I think that's why people hate that line in the Code of Honor. Your integrity to yourself is more important than your immediate life.
Mm-hmm. That is a bitch to apply.
Yeah.
It really is. Arthur? I can see you're thinking something.
See, because my headspace goes to, again, like just more perspective driven as well. And it's hard because we all have our viewpoints on what we believe is right or wrong. And this is where it becomes an entanglement of some kind. And, if we go back to that word popular, popular belief is A, B, C, but I actually believe D, E, F. And this is where it becomes really interesting. And this is where we have so many conflicts around these dynamics. Hey, and on the other side, so if we go back to even Scientology, there is a selling point there. You know what I mean? Where it promises certain things for your life. But then once you start going through that process, then you start becoming more you, which is around what you were saying, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Getting rid of these reactions and getting rid of these things. This is tough because nobody knows what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, what's right and what's wrong. And all I know is on this earth, it all works.
Well, I think
it all works.
If you really have to ask if what works and what doesn't, and trying to evaluate, you just look at statistics. So in this current day and age in society, the world globally, not very many people are happy. Not very many people are thriving. Not many people know that they have power. Like we're talking.
Even with those kinds of concepts, though, like what does thriving look like? What does being comfortable look like? You know what I mean? And this is where my point is like, okay, what is it that we're actually striving for, and what is correct versus what is incorrect?
I would say freedom, because freedom makes people happy. And I'm not talking about freedom without a purpose. If people feel that they have the freedom to choose, if people feel that they have the freedom to be, do, and have, right now, I feel like, for example, my viewpoint versus a cashier at one of the stores, is very different. Like, I believe that I'm infinitely capable, and sure, there are these barriers in this game, but it's not impossible. Whereas they might believe, oh, they didn't finish their high school, they didn't go to college, they only have this score, whatever. Like, it's just not practical. They're a realist, that they're going to do this forever, and maybe they'll get a raise and become, or a different position and become a manager, but that's kind of where it ends for them. So
Now, what if they're okay with that? What if to them that
if they're okay with
is the
that, then
dream?
that's fine. If that's the dream, that's fine. But I do know.
Okay, and then let's say they're complaining about it, right?
Yeah.
What are they willing to do about it?
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Not many people know that they have the power to change that situation. And if they did, they'd realize they are free.
Yep.
So
if they knew that.
So yeah. So for me, it's like education would be key. Doing these podcasts, doing, what you can to just constantly let them know, hey, you have choices. You are a free being.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't have to be in the circumstances that you're in if you don't want to. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a monk, nothing wrong with being a cashier, nothing wrong with even cleaning toilets or whatever the fuck makes people happy, as long as they're happy.
Right. Well, I think it would be safe to say that the balance of the population is struggling from day to day.
Yeah.
They're having a hard time making.
That's ultimately what I'm
meet.
saying.
Yeah. The balance is, it ain't pretty.
Yeah.
And they need.
Which is funny because we're all living then in the mutual out-rudiments because we're actually agreeing to live that way.
Exactly.
It's insane.
That's right.
Absolutely insane. Like, I don't want to pay my tax, but somebody says I have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's my bloody money. I worked for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So, it too is relative to what it is you're either agreeing with or not agreeing with. And mutual out-rudiments is agreeing with things that are less than survival, but for reasons, other reasons that may have come ultimately earlier overts, earlier misunderstoods, miseducation, no education. I think that's probably the biggest one, or a lack of a proper education. But there too, we are mutually out-roots because we're allowing our senators and representatives and presidents to dictate how we and our children and our grandchildren are going to be educated. That's a mutual out-rudiments thing. And ultimately, KRC triangle: knowledge, responsibility, and control.
Yeah. And that's why there's knowledge in there.
That's right. That's right.
We all need education.
Yeah. And we do this podcast for that very reason.
Yeah. I mean, you changed my mind on the whole ADHD thing yesterday, to where I'm I've contemplated some very big things.
Yeah. I mean, you could, if there was, it always comes down to getting.
Because that's kind of a mutual out-rudiment as well.
Yeah.
Because
of course it is.
If ADHD, like if the concept of ADHD didn't exist, and it was something you said to me a couple of weeks ago in a private situation that I had going on, you even said to me, Elise, like, if you didn't know that was happening, would you have a problem with it? And it's the same kind of thing with some of these concepts where it's like, if you had no idea that ADHD was a thing, would you have it? Would it exist?
I think it would, because even since I was a kid, like, I've always had these issues. So, whether we stick a label on it or not, it would still be the same thing. However, I have seen times when I have, solidly bought into it. And because of that, there have been times where I've crippled myself because I've just been like, well, you know what, this is an area that I just can't compete with. Therefore, I'm giving power towards that thing. And yeah, in that podcast yesterday, there was an element of that as well. But ultimately, I know that I'm infinitely capable. It's just, getting past these little barriers that I guess I've mocked up. So I'm not perfect.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It really is, because there's so many elements out there that we all grasp to, and that's where I think Scientology is really cool, because it helps you discover the truth ultimately.
Yeah, but I mean, you get
around these things.
You get new realities, and you go, maybe I was operating off of false information, or my reality wasn't what I thought my reality was, and awareness, and an increase of awareness, and increase of awareness, and increase.
Even now, like I just realized, and I double backed and I checked. I was like, I just said we're not all perfect or something. What did I say? But I think I used the word we. That is a mutually out-rudiment statement. When people, and they always get me with this, but like when people screw up and they're like, I'm only human. How many people use that line? And then like, what do you say towards that?
Human. Right.
Right. You say good luck and hope for the best.
That gets me every single time. Like it just reminds me like, oh, okay, this person is only human. So, but then I'm going into agreement with their victimness, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it drives me nuts to have people that have paid for services, and they want to do the service, and they'd rather go off and do something else, and I'm going to continue in a couple of months type of a thing. Drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Because their original goal is to do this thing, and they've got it paid for, but they'd rather go off and fry other fish, because that's easier than having to confront their own case.
And that's the difficult thing, because here's the thing: Scientology affords people the opportunity to do all those things.
Right. What was your original intent? I mean, it's and an analogy is all these people come over to this other country and the other side of this big, huge body of water and say it's the United States, and they sign this agreement and all this stuff. And what are they doing less than 10 years into it? They're charging taxes.
Yeah.
They're charging taxes, the same thing they tried to escape from. And that's mutual out-rudiments. Same as slavery, mutual out-rudiments. All men are created equal except the slaves we have out there in that back cabin.
Yeah.
Mutual out-rudiments.
Maybe it's the word comfortable that gets in the way of it as well. Because I know for myself as well, the moment I reached a comfortable state studying Scientology, I drifted quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that way with anything, is that the hardest thing to do is to monitor yourself. And you have to have a foil, a sounding board. Like he says, it's a two-terminal universe.
Yeah.
It's very difficult and you have to be able to say, I give you the authority to evaluate for me my friend, my best friend, my wife, my husband, that sort of a thing. That's hard to do. And then self-correct when somebody points it out to you is the hardest thing still. And go, yeah, I fucked up.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep.
And even LRH had a hard time doing that, or he would have at least lived another 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to do, but it is definitely, the information in this podcast and what we're trying to do is give people food for thought, when it comes to mutual out-rudiments. So does anybody have any closing statements before we end this at around an hour and a half?
Yeah, I just quickly want to say that, so if you are not going in session and you are, living life and wanting to come revisit again in a little while, just don't do that if you can prevent it. It's an hour out of 24.
An hour a day is 365 hours.
Yeah. So
granted, that's a lot, but even if you take out the weekends, it's still 300-ish.
Yeah.
Arthur?
I think for this podcast, be careful of what you agree to and do your best. If you're not sure what's right or wrong for you, discover what that is before you go into any agreement. And Education,
Absolutely.
education.
Absolutely. Do your due
And
diligence.
try not to go against your own morals either, making decisions. Because to me, if you can stick to your moral code, that is the voice of God right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If you go
You know, it
against
says,
God,
trust your own knowingness.
You
you've
know.
sinned. Yeah.
You know.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Don't compromise with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to do. Very hard.
We
Yeah.
have the tools to help make it less hard, trust me. And having a group, a
Yeah.
third dynamic, and that's part of the reason of this podcast is to put a third dynamic out there virtually that you can have is be there with other people, and you can converse. You can converse on the college. You can send us chats. You can post on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So we're here for you. Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.